welcome back to the shop. Today I want to go over VCT solenoids once again on the 5.4 liter 3-valve engines. Now I've gone over these in great detail, how to test them and stuff like that, but today I want to go over another anomaly, I guess you could say, of the 5.4 3-valve. This engine has plenty of hidden surprises for you. Now what can happen is you do my test where you disconnect the connector electrically, you go for a drive to see if the concern is still occurring, if these are still sticking, and it still occurs, and you're back to square one. Now it can happen on high mileage 3-valve engines like this one. It's 172,000 miles on it, original solenoid. The spring inside of here that puts it back to that position on there and holds that valve in place can actually give way because it's so weak from all the heat cycles over the years. So today we're going to show you, we're going to go for a drive, we're going to show you this solenoid in the vehicle and how it's still moving even though it's disconnected, and what the PCM's seeing and what's actually going on. And then we're going to take this valve apart, we're going to show you exactly why it's happening, and then we're going to go for another drive with a brand new VCT solenoid in the truck, and I'll show you how it should react.
Alright, so here's the recording with the vehicle fully hot, and both the VCT solenoids are disconnected right now. You can see we're hovering right around 0, which is normal. That's how it's supposed to look. But when we're driving, it's still advancing on this bank. You can see, you'll see it way over here, which is the error. It's not the actual timing. So it's actually being advanced, 30, 40 degrees of timing, and that's how far it is off from 0. Which is where it should be because it's not commanding. You'll see down here it'll just stay at 13% or so because it's defaulted open loop. You can see it up here because it's disconnected. It knows they're disconnected. So you'll see actual timing advance up here, and then you'll see the error right here. Pay attention to, I think it was bank 1, which is right here, or bank 2. You'll see it goes way out over here. Okay. And that's where we start getting our knocking and we're dying out because we're at 40 degrees of advance at base RPM. So let's go for a drive. So we're cruising along. Looks good, right? That's how it should hold. You give it a little bit of power and the oil's creeping through. And you can see that top one there, bank 1. It's jumping all over the place. Bank 2, it's hovering around 0 still. It's still in, the VCT solenoid is off. It should just block out oil. Let me get to an appropriate straight section here. Not really giving it some gas. See how high up it went? Now we're stopped. It's still advanced a little too high, but when it's at 30 or so degrees of advance is when it actually makes that knocking noise, feels like it's going to die out, all that good stuff. So you're pushing oil through it, and that solenoid's sticking. Here, right there. Hopefully you heard that on the video there. It's a real basic mic on here, but yeah, I gave it some throttle. I went to stop, and we're down to base RPM. It was still way over here, and this little O right here, little circle, means it was even off the charts, out of range for a regular range of timing on here. So you can see why. At base RPM we're stopped, the thing's just trying to die out and rattling and everything else. All the timing is off. So everything, all the combustion and the fuel timing and the spark timing, everything's messed up because of the actual cam timing. So it's very, very obvious here. And over here, this other one, it's not so bad on bank 2, but this has got 171,000 miles on it. So it's kind of doing the same thing over here. This is why you may see timing error codes for over advanced, okay, or over retarded. And this is a good visual, driving down the road of how it looks. Let's clear out the graph on there, and let's go down the road here. Now this generally happens when it's nice and warm like this. And that bank one is the bad one, the real bad one. It's actually died out on the customer. Hear it? Hear it? Real bad, and it's stuck there right now. And it just cleared up because the solenoid became unstuck. Real bad.
Okay, so here is the VCT solenoid out of the truck. We're going to show you exactly why it's able to still move and allow oil flow even though it's not electrically connected and actuated by the PCM. So basically there's a few parts to this. You have the connector, the solenoid itself, the windings and all that, and there's a valve inside of there. And that valve inside of there, once it gets electrically actuated, you know, by the solenoid through magnetism, it'll push it down and out a certain amount based on a duty cycle from the PCM. Now what happens is the valve comes down, okay, it's inside of here right here, and it gets stuck and it allows the oil flow even though the PCM's cutting it off. That's how we're getting stuck in the advanced position like that when it shouldn't be at a base idle. It starts to die out or almost dies out. Now if it disconnected, why is it still happening? Well, the reason being is this valve, of course, you know, it mechanically can still get stuck. It has varnish and everything else, debris on it, 170,000 miles, it can get stuck in the bore. Of course we know that, but why is it moving? Now, there's a few pieces of this. There's a snap ring and a washer, stuff like that, some screens to filter the oil coming in, and there's also a spring. And what that spring does is it automatically pushes that valve back up to where the lands are matching up on here, on the valve and the housing, and it blocks off the oil flow. Well, that spring, it gets weak over time, and all the heat cycles of the engine, and it doesn't have its spring tension anymore and can't keep that valve pushed back up and keep it from moving in the first place. So it does double duty where the valve sticks and it can't push it back up, and then of course the oil pressure is coming in and it just overcomes it and pushes the valve down and flows through like it shouldn't be. So the spring is the main culprit as to why it can do it without electrical power. And I'll try to show you here. This valve, it sticks in there quite a bit. And it moved a little bit down like that. You can see it's sticking in here quite a bit. And I should be able to get it out for you here. I mean, yeah, this one. There we go. Yeah. So this is the valve that's inside of there and has lands on it, just like a valve and a valve body, a transmission, and they seal off the oil that's flowing through it, and they move throughout the bore on there, and they open or close passages. Now, in a transmission, the fluid has a lot of additives to it, so it's always cleaning the valves, and they can move back and forth freely in there for a long time. Usually it's not an issue. And the springs generally are a lot stronger than these, from my experience anyways. And inside of there is like a little pintle, I know you can't see it, that actually pushes down on top of this and moves it around. And then the spring brings it back to the neutral position or the closed off position on there. So you can see this thing's really sticking in here, and that's the whole reason for it. With that being said, what I want to show you now is the exact same situation after the VCT solenoid is replaced with a brand new complete unit on there. You'll see we're driving along, they're unplugged, and this valve is not able to move. It stays in the closed off position like it should. And this is just proof in the pudding that it is possible in the higher mileage ones for the spring to be so weak the oil pressure can't overcome this valve and move it on you even though it's disconnected.
And here we are after the oil pump replacement and of course the VCT solenoid replacement. We're going to go for a drive. They're disconnected and see what the error is. Now, like I said, once they're disconnected, obviously you cannot actuate them, and of course there's no other way for them to move besides weak spring inside of there. So we just gunned it right there. and they're sitting there right around 0, which is what they should be because they're not being actuated at all.